Welcome to Carol and Gary's See America Tour.
Hello, everyone. After a 2.5-hour drive, Carol, Jasper, and I are now in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. We didn't have to cross any mountains to get here, but it was still a 2-lane road in a light rain. Many Americans don't want members of Congress employed, let alone being designated as survivors of an atomic Armageddon. But that's exactly what happened from the 1960s through the 1980s when the Greenbrier Resort in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, sheltered a top-secret survival bunker for the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. Tactfully known as the U.S. Government Relocation Facility, the bunker was cleverly dug into the hillside under a part of the Greenbrier Hotel that was being built simultaneously. In 1955, during what was known as the Cold War, President Dwight Eisenhower instructed the Department of Defense to draft emergency plans for Congress in case of a nuclear strike. Even if Washington, D.C. were destroyed, American officials needed a procedure to maintain the continuity of government. As part of these efforts, the Army Corps of Engineers was charged with finding a location for a nuclear bunker for the members of Congress. They selected the Greenbrier, a luxury resort in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. Greenbrier was chosen because of its relative closeness to Washington, D.C., but far enough away to be safe from an atomic bomb, and because of its prior relationship with the U.S. government. During World War II, Greenbrier served as an internment facility for Japanese, Italian, and German diplomats, and then as a military hospital where Dwight Eisenhower himself was a patient. Although the hotel returned to its original function after World War II, government officials occasionally held conferences at Greenbrier. Construction of the bunker began in 1957. Government officials tried to hide the secret project by announcing the construction of Greenbrier's West Virginia wing, but construction workers and locals were suspicious, particularly about the sheer volume of concrete that was being poured for this project. The $14 million project was completed on October 16, 1962, just before the start of the Cuban Missile Crisis. After its construction, the Greenbrier bunker was maintained by 12 to 15 permanent government employees who worked undercover as members of the Arlington, Virginia-based television repair company called Foresight Associates. According to a former superintendent of the bunker, the government workers at Greenbrier spent approximately 20% of their time doing television work for Greenbrier, with the remainder devoted to bunker maintenance. They changed name tags on each bunk after every congressional election. They also swapped in new magazines every week and cleaned all of the bunker's 167 toilets. Among other supplies, the bunker was provided with enough food for 1,000 people to last 60 days. Some of this food was refreshed periodically. Most members of Congress were never told of the existence of this bunker or informed of any evacuation plans. Only senior leadership was ever briefed. 30 years later, on Sunday, May 31, 1992, a Washington Post writer named Ted Gupp leaked the story of the Greenbrier bunker to the world. Gupp rationalized the leak by saying that when the bunker was built, it took bombers hours to go over the polar ice cap. But by 1992, the warning time had been reduced to minutes, if not less. Given that its secure location was one of the primary guarantees for its defense, the bunker was quickly decommissioned. In 1995, the Greenbrier Resort began offering bunker tours to its guests. In 2006, the tours were expanded to the general public. So on Tuesday, October 13th, Carol and I toured the decommissioned Greenbrier bunker. First of all, no pictures or videos were allowed during our tour of the bunker. The pictures you will see were taken from internet articles about the bunker. I did not sneak a camera into the bunker. The Greenbrier Resort is a beautiful old hotel with 710 guest rooms. We could have taken pictures of the inside of the Greenbrier Resort, but when I made reservations for our bunker tour, it was recommended that we leave our cameras in the car. Much of the bunker has been leased to a company that uses the space for data storage, and because of the sensitive nature of this data, security is still an issue at the Greenbrier. The Greenbrier bunker is buried 720 feet underground. It would not survive a direct nuclear strike, but is capable of weathering a blast 15 to 30 miles away and protecting its occupants from fallout. The two-level facility is 112,544 square feet, which is roughly the size of 2 football fields stacked on top of each other. The bunker has 4 massive doors made by an Ohio-based safe company, then shipped to Greenbrier by railroad. The 2 largest doors, one weighing 28 tons and the other 20 tons, require just 50 pounds of force to open. Once sealed, the bunker would have had enough air to last for 72 hours, after which a ventilation system would filter air from the outside. Although most of the bunker was a closely guarded secret, its large halls, intended for sessions of Congress, were actually part of the Greenbrier Hotel and were often used for things like trade shows. But these halls could have been sealed off in the event of an attack. The largest hall, the Exhibition Hall, was designed to host joint sessions of Congress. Just off of the Exhibition Hall are 2 smaller auditoriums, the 440-seat Governor's Hall, intended for the House of Representatives, and the 130-seat Mountaineer Room, which would have hosted the 100 members of the Senate. A hidden passage marked by a door which reads "Danger, High Voltage, Keep Out" led to the rest of the bunker. Assuming, for example, that the Cuban Missile Crisis resulted in the United States being attacked by the Soviet Union, Congress would have been quickly evacuated to the Greenbrier. The first thing that would have happened upon arrival is that each person would have to strip naked, throw their clothes and shoes into a hazardous waste chute, then walk through a decontamination chamber, which was basically a narrow car wash, where radioactive contaminants would be washed away. After exiting the decontamination chamber, each person would have been scanned with a Geiger counter to ensure that they did not contain any radioactive material, and then they would be issued military fatigues and some toiletry items. The majority of Congress would have then walked down this hallway to their assigned area of the bunker, which for most would have been this tight bunk area. The bunker contained 1,100 bunk beds set up in this fashion. Each congressman would have had a small locker to store their toiletry items. High-ranking congressmen such as the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader were assigned beds in a slightly more spacious area on another floor. The Greenbrier bunker has a broadcast studio with giant photo backdrops of the U.S. Capitol and the White House. The purpose of this broadcast studio was to have someone in charge stand in front of one of the giant photos and broadcast reassuring telecasts to whomever might still be alive. Since it was possible that someone might become ill while in the bunker, it was decided that the medical staff from the Greenbrier Hotel would be allowed to isolate with the congressman in the bunker. Pharmaceuticals and medical equipment were stored in the bunker to allow doctors to perform diagnostic tests and even surgery. The bunker also contained a 400-seat cafeteria, but with beds for over 1,100 people, people would have to eat in shifts. Fortunately, there was never a disaster that triggered an evacuation to Greenbrier, but only the senior members of Congress were ever told about the bunker. Plus, there was never a plan to include families in the evacuation, so we can assume that if an evacuation notice had been broadcast, chaos would have ensued. Our Greenbrier bunker tour was extremely interesting, but with the bunker being decommissioned prior to 9/11, it makes me wonder what kind of isolation plans are in use today. On Wednesday, October 14th, Carol, Jasper, and I traveled 60 miles from White Sulpher Springs, West Virginia, to Beckley, West Virginia. We came to Beckley with plans of taking a coal mining tour, but due to the coronavirus, the mine tour has been suspended, but the rest of the coal mine museum and grounds were open. Coal companies provided not only jobs, but a unique way of life for miners and their families. Since most of the mines were located far from large towns, the coal companies built their own towns and provided inexpensive homes, a company store, a church, and other facilities for miners and their families. Here is an example of a bachelor shanty. It was occupied by a single miner or a married miner who only lived there during the week and then went home on the weekends. The simple space is a good example of getting by with the bare necessities. It was warm and dry with enough space for a chair, stove, bed, and a few essentials. This was a typical 3-room house for a married miner. Known as Jenny Lynn's, these structures dated from 1925 to 1940. Miners rented the house from the company, and then rent would be deducted from their paycheck. Often to make ends meet, the family would rent out beds in their home to single miners. Each house had its own outhouse in the backyard, as there were no sewer facilities in the coal town. Early coal mining was a dangerous job. You can see a vein of coal in this hillside. Here, let me highlight it to make it easier to see. Veins of coal were very narrow, requiring miners to crawl through a tunnel up to a mile in length to get to their work area. They often laid on their side while digging coal. The coal was then placed in a shallow cart and pulled to the entrance of the mine by other workers or mules. Every miner had an ID tag. After leaving the bathhouse where the miners changed into their work clothes and picked up their lantern, they were given an ID tag. The tag was logged into a book with the miner's name and the section where he would be working. He was required to have the tag with him the entire shift. The ID tag system kept track of who was in the mine, where they were working, and provided identification in case of an accident. Tags were used to mark a load of coal so that the miner received credit for their work. Most lunch boxes were divided into 3 parts. The bottom, which held the drinking water, a middle section for their main meal, and the top part, usually called a pie pan, where a homemade dessert or biscuits might go. A secure lid kept the rats out of the food, and there were plenty of rats in the mine. Rats were a vital part of coal mining. If you looked around and didn't see any rats, you probably needed to get out of the area. Rats could sense vibration and would run away if a cave-in was imminent. In addition to rats, miners relied on canaries. Mines contained dangerous gases that could kill a miner. The miners would carry a canary in a small cage. If you looked over and your canary was chirping away, you were fine, but if you looked over and your canary was dead, you needed to get out of the mine as fast as possible. The coal camps were an extension of the mining operations and were under complete control of the companies. The camps included not only miners but also a superintendent, foreman, administrators, engineers, doctors, metal workers, carpenters, and many other trades. It was expensive and problematic for coal companies to keep large amounts of U.S. currency on hand, so miners were often paid in scrip. Each mine had its own scrip tokens and paper scrip. Since the scrip could only be spent at the company store, the miners had to pay whatever the company store charged. Many families were in debt to the company store, having purchased goods on credit. Here is a picture looking down the tunnel that our mine tour would have taken. Although we were disappointed about not being able to take the mine tour, the museum was very interesting and well worth a visit. On Saturday, October 17th, Carol and I drove 20 miles north of Beckley to visit the new River Gorge Bridge near Victor, West Virginia. The bridge, which opened in October 1977, reduced a 40-minute drive down narrow mountain roads to less than 1 minute. The bridge is 3,030 feet long, with an arch that spans 1,700 feet, making it the longest arch bridge in the world. The bridge sits 876 feet above the river below. On the third Saturday of October, which is today, the Fayette County Chamber of Commerce hosts Bridge Day, the only day that visitors can walk across the bridge. On Bridge Day, it's legal to jump off the bridge, provided that you're wearing a parachute. But this year, due to COVID-19, the bridge walk, and therefore the bridge jumping, was canceled. We were able to walk down 178 steps to a viewing platform for pictures. This completes our second and final week in West Virginia. We will be leaving West Virginia early tomorrow morning. West Virginia is the 35th state that Carol and I have visited together. If you like this video but have not yet subscribed, please do so to be notified of future videos, and as always, feel free to share with your friends. Thanks for watching!